We are doing every faceless men theory. Um, let's just get straight into it. So, for some context, the faceless men are a super secret and cool assassin guild in Bravos in the House of Black and White. They can change their face and their appearance. That's kind of their whole shtick. Now we're gonna talk about some theories. So the first theory, now this one's like actually pretty important to a lot of other theories surrounding the faceless men, and some theories which concern like the future of the books, which I'm not really going to go into. I'm going to kind of stick with like past theories with these videos, like explanatory theories, but not really like predictive theories. But anyways, so the Iron Bank is just the most powerful bank, and the theory is just that the Faceless Men and the Iron Bank just have deep connections, or are one of the same, or are working in concert, or like something or other, right? So they're both in Bravos, first of all. And then some points in favor of this theory is that the Iron Bank was built on top of iron mines, and they have like these deep subterranean vaults where like you actually put your gold and your wealth and whatnot. And we also see like similar subterranean vaults in the House of Black and White when in Arya's chapters, she's described as going downstairs and going down, down, and down, and down, and down. In the world of Ice and Fire, we hear that when the Iron Bank was like first established, there were 23 key holders, and these key holders had keys that like literally were to the vaults, the underground vaults of the Iron Bank. And nowadays there are like thousands of key holders, but they're all like pretty ceremonial, and they don't actually open any vaults. That could be a lie. Maybe some do, whatever. But like nowadays, it's not as important, right? Like there used to be just 23, and they really opened. They were known to like actually open vaults in the Iron Bank. Nowadays, there are thousands. They're ceremonial, seem to be kind of like a status symbol, and at least like publicly speaking, they don't actually open the vaults. However, we see the kindly man use an ornate key to open a huge underground vault in the house under the House of Black and White in Arya's chapters. So pretty pretty suspicious. And another thing is that the Iron Bank is just like commonly rumored to send assassins. And like throughout this video, you're gonna hear me say like, "Oh, it's rumored in story, therefore it's cap." But like this time, it's like yeah, of course the Iron Bank like uses um, like does things to their political enemies to try to like get their money back. And one thing they can do is like send assassins or like threaten to send assassins or whatever. Some points against this theory are just like really none. I hardly see anyone ever like contest this theory online. It seems to be the basis of a lot of other theories, and I thought it'd be like pretty important to establish going forward. And another thing is that like this is kind of a minor theory, but it's also kind of implied that like the faceless a, a faceless man like founded Bravos. Um, Actually, this is just not that important. We're just gonna move on. Another huge theory is that the faceless men caused the doom of Valyria. So Septim Barth uh, believes that the 14 flames were like kind of held back by these mages. This isn't like a confirmed thing. It's technically just what Septim Barth believes, but in the fandom, it's generally considered that like stuff that Septim Barth believes, like he's cooking. Like he knows more than like the average macer, like the random Joe. Like this guy knows what's up. So Septim Barth thinks that there are these mages that casted spells to like make sure the 14 flames didn't like erupt and like go off as volcanoes. Um, he also believes that like Valyrian like political infighting caused like too many of the mages to die and like get assassinated, and then that blew everything up. But there's another explanation, which is that the faceless men killed them. So the kindly man, when he is like talking to Arya about when like the beginning of the faceless men, like their origins, he talked about how there was like a slave in the mines of Illyria who like begged for death, and the OG faceless man like killed the slave because he like to release him and have like him as a mercy or like something. I don't know. These guys are weird or whatever, right? And Arya's like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Shouldn't you be killing the masters? Why are you killing the slave? And the kindly man's like, oh, because of this and this and yada yada yada, god of death, blah blah blah. But also the masters got their due, like we handled them. But that's a story for another time. And you're like, and we read this and we're like, oh, what do you wait? The faceless men killed the masters? Like, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? And this is the theory behind what that line meant. Like they the faceless men killed the mages that controlled the 14 flames, and now that the 14 flames aren't under control, they erupt and they doom Valyria. Also, the faceless men seem generally anti-slavery. Bravos as a city is anti-slavery. It was founded by slaves. Um, the Sea Lords of Bravos back the side that's against the slavers in like every conflict. Um, yeah, so faceless men are like generally anti-slavery, anti-Valyria. Um, some points against this is that Septim Bart's hypothesis that it was just like caused by political infighting is like fairly reasonable. Also, like the kindly man could just be talking up the faceless men to like seem cool to Arya, or maybe he really believes that happened, and the faceless men have just like embellished stories as time has gone on. Like it's been like 300 years, like 400 years. So maybe they just really think that they did that nowadays. And when really they did it. Moving on. Other next part of the theory is that the Maesters paid for the doom of Valyria. Now you may be thinking, hold on, this is a little crazy. This part is like a more tinfoil part of the theory. This theory says that the Citadel sold the Lannisters their Valyrian steel sword, Bright Roar, and used the gold that the Lannisters paid them with to pay the Faceless Men to doom Valyria. The reason why this theory exists is because there's a prophecy out there that says that Lannister gold would doom Valyria. So the Lannisters really wanted a Valyrian steel sword because every cool noble house in Westeros had their cool Valyrian steel sword. But the Valyrians wouldn't sell a sword to the Lannisters because there was this like prophecy that Lannister gold is gonna fuck them all over, right? But the Lannisters still really needed the sword, so they acquired it, and it's very vague in the text as to how the Lannisters acquired the sword. Um, so here's where we get to theorizing. We think that the Maesters somehow made the Lannisters a sword. Now the Maesters seem to be able to make Valyrian steel links pretty consistently, right? Like um, the Valyrian steel links they're not like common. Obviously, like it's said that like 1 in 100 Maesters actually has one, but like that is something that happens. Like you get a Valyrian steel link and for magic and shit, right? But how are they making these Valyrian steel links? I thought it was like a lost art, but maybe the Maesters are just like gatekeeping it. The Maesters also seem to dislike magic, and the Valyrians were big magic people. Um, they use a lot of magic. Some points against this theory, though, is that if the Maesters are able to just make a Valyrian steel sword, um, why are they not? Why why are they not like completely monopolizing this market? Like now that Valyria is gone, if the Maesters really back in the day had a way to consistently make Valyrian steel swords and were able to sell the Lannisters Bright Roar, why are they not doing that in 299 AC? Seems like um, a big waste of money. Like if they could be raking in bread like this, they'd have no competition. Also, it just seems like a huge political move, like an enormous political move to hire the faceless men, which is already like okay, that's not like a crazy political move, but like that's not something that you do lightly. Not only that, you call the assassination on a whole civilization, and not just any civilization, the most powerful civilization in the world, in the world, um, which is like pretty crazy. Like the Maesters have never moved like this ever again. Like they've never pulled off something with the political balls as this ever again. And I can't even imagine how expensive that is. I can't imagine like the invoice the faceless men sent after destroying the civilization. Um, People say that like hiring a faceless man will can cost an army to kill like a merchant, or like half an army for a merchant. And people can't even imagine what a princess would cost, or like what a king or like a queen would cost, or like this is kind of spoiling a later theory, but if you can kill a king for a dragon egg, I feel like destroying an entire civilization would be inexorbitantly expensive, and it's like how could the Macers have possibly paid for that? Like no, there's no way Bright Roar alone is paying for the downfall of the most powerful civilization in the world. So part of this may just be that the Faceless Men were using this as an excuse to destroy Valyria because they didn't like Valyria anyway. Um, and also, the Faceless Men's like pricing scheme seems to not like just be linear based on how important your target is, but it also seems to depend on how wealthy the client is. So maybe the Faceless Men like kind of just bankrupted the Citadel, and that's why the Citadel isn't moving like this anymore because they have no bread. But moving on. Random minor theory. The Faceless Men killed Harlan Hoare. Harlan Hoare was an Ironborn prince who, quote unquote, fell off a horse. He probably actually did fall off a horse. I actually don't believe in this theory much. It's a pretty suspicious death. That was like possibly arranged by an ambitious younger brother. Harlan Hoare's younger brother, by the way, was Harwin Hoare, and he was like the first Ironborn king of the Riverlands. So pretty important political figure. It would make sense that like, oh, I'm Harwin. I have big plans for the Ironborn, but I can't do it if my lame older brother is king. So I'm gonna have him killed. That way, I'm next in line. Um, and there's parallels to like what Euron does in the main story. But what I actually think the point of the story is just to like hint that Euron is just another hint that Euron used a faceless man, and we're gonna get into that later. But like, yeah, this is also rumored in story, which means it's not true. Um, and there's also like not that much actual evidence behind this theory. It's kind of like, oh, this is suspicious, and that's about it. Also, Euron paid with a dragon egg. What does this random younger brother have to pay with? What does this Ironborn prince, who's not even the direct heir but second in line, have to offer for Faceless Man? You know, like you don't. I've never thought of the Ironborn as like a particularly wealthy house, especially not the guy who's not heir. But whatever. Moving on. Okay, the Martell Targaryen peace accords. So basically, Um, in like in the like conquest era, when Aegon the First is like trying to conquer Dorne, it's not really working, and Rhaenys dies, and he gets sad, and blah blah blah. During this time, one day, Aegon the First is sitting on the throne, and he gets an envoy from Dorne, and it's from Nymor Martell. Nymor Martell's mother has just died, like of old age, and his mom, Nymor Martell's mom, was like a hawk, like she's a big war hawk. She was like, "Roar, we want war. We'll defend Dorne until we die." Blah blah blah, all that shit, right? She passes away. Nymor Martell presumably is tired of all this. He sends an envoy to Aegon the First, not surrendering, um, but just trying to present some terms. So Aegon reads this letter. Now Nymor sends his daughter to do this, so like his heir, and presumably like some guards and shit. Um, so Aegon reads this letter. He's on the Iron Throne. He's reading this letter. He's gripping the Iron Throne so hard that he starts bleeding, and then without a word, he hops on Balerion, goes to Dragonstone, comes back to King's Landing, and then agrees to the terms. And everyone's like, "What the fuck, Aegon? Like, what were you doing? What's up?" And it's just a very like mysterious story. So the theory is that Nymor hired a faceless man, or like threatened in this letter to hire a faceless man to kill Aenys. So this is what happened. This is what is rumored in the story. So Aenys at the time is like um, what, six, I think. Um, and so the theory is just that Aegon's reading this letter, and it's like, oh, if you don't accept these terms, I'm gonna send a faceless man to kill Aenys, and the faceless man never fail. So in favor of this is that it's a pretty scary threat. If I had a son and I was negotiating something, and someone just said, "Yo, if you don't do this, I'm gonna hire a hitman to kill your son," I'd probably be like more inclined to like agree to their terms. But there are like a couple points against it. First of all, it's rumored in story, so it's cap. Second of all, Aegon can just threaten to do like the exact same thing. Like, oh, I'm gonna send a faceless man after your daughter. And for one, uh, the Targaryens presumably have more money than the Martells. And for two, it's not known whether Nymor like had other heirs, whereas Aegon actually did. So like, if Aegon and Nymor did both send faceless men to go kill each other's heirs, Aegon would still have an heir left, and the kingdom wouldn't just like fall apart, whereas like Nymor wouldn't. So whatever. Also, this theory doesn't explain why Aegon went to Dragonstone. Like, was he just going to Dragonstone to blow off steam and like just needed a break and just wanted to like going to Dragonstone is his version of taking a lap? I don't know. Um, but there are better theories out there that exist. So the best theory out there that I've heard for this situation is that um, Nymor sends this letter. This letter says, "Hey, so sorry. Rhaenys actually uh, survived. She got tortured by this other house, probably the Ironwoods. She's going to blame it on the Ironwoods. She got tortured by the Ironwoods, but I'm so sorry." So that's why Aegon's gripping the chair, right? That's why he's mad as shit. But we recovered her body, and as a show of goodwill and like good faith, I have sent a ship with her body to Dragonstone. You can go check it out yourself and like uh, give her like a proper Targaryen like funeral rites. And so then Aegon goes to Dragonstone, burns Rhaenys' body, comes back and agrees to terms. That's like the real theory. This is what this faceless man shit is like what's rumored like in story, like, oh, maybe it was a faceless man, but like this is a theory that I think is generally accepted in the fandom as to what happened with this Martell Targaryen letter. But let me know if your other theories or like any better theories or whatever. Okay, another theory. The faceless men killed Jaehaera Targaryen, the first wife of Aegon III, the Dragon's Bane. Okay, so Jaehaera allegedly committed suicide at the age of 10. Um, and I'm thinking this might have been the faceless man. Um, so first of all, in King's Landing at the time, it's post dance. There's a lot of political opposition. There's a lot of people who really wouldn't want Jaehaera Targaryen to be queen. Um, Also, it's a quote unquote suicide. That's pretty suspicious. Like 10. I feel like 10 is. I don't know. Maybe I'm ignorant for this, but like I feel like 10 might be pretty early to have those kind of um, to see those like kind of mental health issues popping up in kids. I'm not really sure. I might be talking out of my ass here. Um, and something in favor here is that it's semi rumored. So we hear talks of this random night, not too random, because I'll talk about the next part of this theory later. But like some guy in Essos is like allegedly talking to some faceless men and some key holders in Bravos. But whatever. All right, some points against this is that the Targaryens, specifically Targaryen women, actually do have a family history of mental health issues. Gale, who's Jaehaerys the first daughter, um, she killed herself. She waded into Blackwater Bay and just like drowned herself after I think some stillbirths. Helena, Jaehaerys' mother, killed herself, and Elora, who is um, more of in like the Dunk and Egg era Targaryen. Her older twin died in like a mishap that was kind of her fault, I guess, and then like she killed herself in grief afterwards. So this really could just be a suicide. Like there are a lot of Targaryen women suicides, and then also like this girl's 10 years old. There's probably like easier ways to have her killed. Also, this death really isn't in the Faceless Men style. Um, like Faceless Men are usually more subtle in this, like not making things intentional suicide. Usually, oh, this person got sick. Oh, this person fell, not on purpose, but they fell. Um, but yeah. Also, Jaehaera like jumped into some spikes and then like stayed there in pain for a while after. Which is I just really feel like isn't the Facelessman style, but let me know. All right, second part of this theory that the Valarians or like the Black faction paid for this assassination. Um, so points in favor of this theory is that the death of Jaehaera Targaryen brings in space for Aegon III's new queen, which is Daenerys Velaryon, which is like interesting. This quote unquote suicide worked out pretty well for the Valarians and the Blacks. Um, the Valarians are obviously very anti-green. The Blacks are obviously anti-green. That's like the definition of the Blacks. And then another point I kind of touched on this earlier, but not in detail. Lord Mooten and Sir Dennis Hart, who were both Black supporters, went to Bravos at some point after the dance. They engaged key holders and faceless men. Another point of this is that Daenerys Valerian's mom is a heart. That's really, really interesting. We really only know about like four hearts in the story, and two of them are right here. One is Daenerys' mom, and the other is this heart who went to Bravos to engage key holders and faceless men. I don't know, man. I don't know. Another point of favor is that the Valarians are supposed to be pretty rich. It's like the Lannisters are rich because they're literally on a gold mine. The Valarians are rich because of Corlys. They have the bread for it. And if not just the Valarians, I'm sure some other blacks would just be like, yeah, we don't like the fact that Jaehaera Targaryen, Aegon the Second's son, is Queen of the Seven Kingdoms right now. That's whack. Um, whatever. Some points against is that the Valarian's wealth should be waning at this point. Like, uh, I think if Corlys hasn't died yet, he dies very recently. He's pretty old. High Tide got burned, and all the wealth that was in there. The Battle of Gullet, they lost a lot of their fleet. Like the Valarians should be losing a fair amount of power post post dance, and then like after past Daenerys Valerian, we really do see like no Valarians marrying into the Targaryen family tree. So we do see a steep drop off, like I mentioned last video, a steep drop off in the Valarians' political relevance in the Seven Kingdoms post dance. But yeah, they just had a war against the Braavosi and the Stepstones as well. So you're having wars against the Braavosi, but you're also working with the Faceless Men, who are huge in Braavosi politics. So are you working with the Braavosi or are you warring against them? So that's just another point. Next, this one is like facts. This is this is just true. Um, Even though it's rumored in story, this is just like so true. So this theory says that the Faceless Men killed Lysandro and Jarkenzo Roger. Lysandro was a wealthy Lycini banker. Jarkenzo was Lysandro's younger brother, and he's the prince consort of Dorne. Um, the Rogers started a bank that, according to the Maesters, eclipsed the Iron Bank in power. And then Lara Roger married Viserys II, and the Rogers ransomed Viserys II for like 100,000, like 150,000 dragons, or like something crazy, right? And their deaths were like super suspicious. They were one day apart. Like that's crazy. And their deaths directly started the downfall of this bank, of like the Roger Bank. So this works out perfectly for the Iron Bank. Like, if I'm laying out the situation, if I had to explain the situation briefly, it's like, oh, this rival bank has way too much power. These two people, these two key figures in this bank have suspicious deaths within a day of each other. And now the Iron Bank is back on top. Interesting how that worked out, right? And this is why I said that the connection between the Iron Bank and the Faces Man, establishing that is pretty important because this is like theories like this become clear as day now. Like, yeah, the deaths being one day apart is almost too suspicious, but like they didn't get caught for this. Like these deaths were clean as hell. I don't remember exactly like how exactly they died. Like I think they're sick or something. I don't know. But like you can't even say, oh, these were murders. No one can say these were murders. They seem like accidents. Now this was rumored in story, but like the pieces fit together so well that there's no way George could write it. There's no way George could have been like, oh, no one even thought that a faceless man could have done this. Okay, moving into some more like modern theories. I'm kind of bringing this one up just because it sucks. People seem to think that Syrio Farrell could be Jack and Hagar, and that Syrio as Jack and or Jack and as Syrio, whatever, same person. Let me see. Somehow survives and escapes against Sir Meryn, which whatever. And then later just puts on Jack and face as like part two of the plan. I mean, come on, man. Like, for Syrio to have survived against Sir Marin, and Sir Marin just says nothing about it. He comes from this fight uninjured. That's super weird. Like Syrio definitely just died, right? Syrio definitely just died against Sir Marin. He had a wooden stick. So this theory would have to posit that like he got captured because Syrio definitely didn't get away. Otherwise, we would have heard about it. And Syrio definitely didn't like beat Marin and escape. Otherwise, we would have heard about it. So the only other possible option is that Sir Marin like captured Syrio, and Syrio gets taken to the Black Cells, which you may be thinking, oh well, that's interesting because Jaqen was in the Black Cell. But no, Maester Pycelle says that there are only three people in the Black Cells. It was like the Lorathi, who's Jaqen, and then Morgenbiter, and then like some other important prisoners like Ned and stuff like that, and Tyrion. Like those were the only people who have ever been in the Black Cells. Um, so yeah, like Syrio being in there, there would have been a record of Syrio being in there, unless Syrio changed his face before. Unless unless Syrio like gets captured and somehow before he gets into the Black Cells changes his face. Um, but yeah, whatever. Also, being Syrio Farrell is a very high profile disguise. Syrio is famous. He's the first Sea Lord of Bravos. Ned from up in Winterfell somehow knows him. And it's not like Ned is on the internet seeing this guy on Twitter. Like, this guy's just very, very famous. And the Faceless Men like to keep it low key. We also have him taking an interest in Arya way too early. Like, what could have possibly tipped him off? Maybe some magic. I don't know. Again, no evidence to suggest that Sir Meryn didn't kill Syrio. I kind of went over that. Only 3 men in the Black Cells. Kind of went over that. Also, Occam's Razor, like, dude definitely just died. Like, too long. Okay, this is a good theory. This is a theory that Jock and Hagar was tasked to kill Ned. So one of the big mysteries in A Song of Ice and Fire is, what was a faceless man doing in the Black Cells in Westeros, and why hasn't he like killed anyone yet? Well, the main theory is that Jaqen's target was Ned, and then Ned got killed unexpectedly, and now Jaqen just like, oh shit, I guess I'll just go fuck off and do whatever, right? Um, so some points in favor is that Jaqen seemed to be heading towards the wall on purpose. He gets himself placed in the black cells, and then Yoren comes through, takes him out, and they're all headed to the wall. It seems like Jaqen was trying to go to the wall on purpose. Ned was supposed to go. The plan was for Ned to go to the wall as well. Um, Also, it seems difficult to just naturally end up in the black cells. Like, if you did a super bad crime, why didn't you get executed? If you did not that bad of a crime, why are you in the black cells? The only people who get put in the black cells are people who are important, like Ned or like Tyrion. But somehow Jack and Roy Combiner end up in the black cells. But maybe Jack can use some of his contacts to end up in the black cells because he actually wanted to be there. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, Another point. I have Occam's razor on here. I don't know. I don't know if this is Occam's razor. Some points against this is that how did Varys let this slide? How like Varys has an alter ego named Rugen, who is the jailer and down in the cells and whatnot. And we know that at the time of A Game of Thrones, Varys is actively working to keep the realm stabilized because they need a bit more time. for the young Griff plot to like cook up, right? So Varys definitely wouldn't want Ned dead by this point because he doesn't want the Starks and the Lannisters at each other's throats this early in the game. But if that's the case, why is he letting these three suspicious figures in the Black Cells when Varys has a lot of influence on the Black Cells, or like knows what's going on in the Black Cells and stuff like that? Like obviously, Varys may not have known that um, Jaqen was a faceless man. I wouldn't expect him to know that. Um, but I felt like he'd be at least a little suspicious of how things ended up that way. Also, maybe there are easier ways to kill Ned. Um, Poison him. I don't know. Next is that Littlefinger paid for it. So this is just a theory that Littlefinger was the one who hired a faceless man to kill Ned. Points in favor. Littlefinger totally has a motive. He hates Ned for marrying Catelyn. It causes chaos. He didn't expect that Joffrey would randomly decide to execute Ned. And even if he did, that would have been like much later on. That would have been after he had already hired the faceless man and like, why not have two backups? Like he needed Ned dead. The reason he needed Ned dead is because if Ned was alive, even if he goes up to the wall, like he would tell everyone, he would tell all of his like supporters and family in the north, oh, Littlefinger betrayed me back in King's Landing. He's the enemy. Kill him as soon as you get the chance. Like so, Ned needs no Littlefinger needs Ned dead. Littlefinger also seems familiar with the cost of a faceless man. He's the guy to bring it up at the small council. I think he's actually the first person in our story to bring up the faceless man. Well, not the first, but like within the first conversation that the faceless men are brought up in, this is the guy. Littlefinger is the guy who like knows about it. Also, Littlefinger's house, the Baelishes, are like from Bravos. Um, Also, he's always doing stuff with other people's debt. Maybe he has ties to the Iron Bank. Also, even if Littlefinger personally didn't have the bread, he's the master of coin. He could have definitely just embezzled the funds. Um, yeah, I have some points against there, but I don't even want to like. Oh, it could be overkill, but like it's not really overkill. Like he cannot let Ned like walk free. Like he cannot leave Ned alive. Otherwise, Ned would have snitched on Littlefinger, and Littlefinger would have been cooked. Like it's not overkill to hire a faceless man if your life depends on it. If like all your political machinations depend on this guy not spilling the beans. The next theory. All right, this one's a little crazy. The Golden Company or the Blackfires or the Aegon cause or someone put a hit on Bloodraven. So this theory says that instead of Jaqen's target being Ned, it's actually Bloodraven. Um, Points in favor. Throughout the story, we have evidence of the House of Black and White slash Faces Men dealing with unrecognized golden dragons, right? So like Jaqen pays Pate, the acolyte, a golden dragon, and Pate doesn't recognize the coin. Arya um, feels a coin and she doesn't recognize it back at the House of Black and White, and it is a dragon. Um, and those are implied, not implied, but like those are theorized to be some of Daemon Blackfire's coinage, which would make sense. It's the bill of golden dragon coins that people wouldn't commonly recognize because not everyone's handling Blackfire currency all the time in 299 AC. Um, Also, uh, Jaqen is looking for a glass candle. Why would you need a glass candle? Well, if you're looking for a 130-year-old tree wizard somewhere vaguely north of the wall, a glass candle would be pretty helpful. He's still headed to join the Night's Watch, which like makes sense. He's maybe planning to go to the Night's Watch and then like range north of the wall and try to kill Bloodraven. Bloodraven also just goes like directly against the ideals of the many-faced god. Many-faced god of death probably just doesn't want someone living like obscenely long, which Bloodraven is. And then this would explain how Jaqen ended up in the Black Cells, because Varys is working with the Aegon cause, and Varys has an alter ego who's Rugen, and Rugen can easily get him in the Black Cells, and it just all makes sense. The issue, though, is it seems a little out of character for the Faceless Men to be working with Valyrians. And I guess you could have said this for the Valyrian point as well, but, whatever. Also, everyone should just expect, like, Bloodraven to be dead by now. Like, dude's mad old. Some ways to reconcile this is maybe the Blackfires put a hit out on Bloodraven in, like, their third or fourth Blackfire Rebellion, and because the House of Black and White like can't confirm his death, they're still searching for him, which is like fair. Um, and then maybe they have some magic and they just know that Bloodraven's alive, or um, maybe one of the Blackfires like dreamed that Bloodraven was alive. This is one of my headcanon theories that like if this was true, if this is true, one way that the Blackfires would actually know that Bloodraven is alive is that they dreamed about it because they're dragon dreamers. So if this is a very modern hit, I'd expect that Sarah Blackfire, Illyrio's wife, dreamed that Bloodraven was alive, and then Illyrio plus the Golden Company put a hit out on Bloodraven. And we know that the Golden Company and Illyrio have the bread to do that because Illyrio has infinite bread, and the Golden Company is one of the richest salsa companies in the South. So yeah, but there are like a point against is that there are like possible other explanations for wanting a glass candle. A glass candle is just like infinitely useful. Like almost no matter what your future plans are as an organization, having a glass candle on standby would like probably help you out. Okay, moving on. This is a very, very, very solid theory that almost everyone in the fandom believes, and if you don't believe it, you're tweaking. Um, this theory says that the Faceless Men killed Balon Greyjoy, King of the Iron Islands, and that Euron paid for it. So, man, I'm tired. Points in favor is that the ghost of High Heart's prophecy said that he saw a Kraken swaying on a bridge, and then a man across from him without a face, with a crow perched on his shoulder, or something like that. Where the man without a face is a faceless man, and the crow on his shoulder is you're on Crow's eye, and blah blah blah. And we know Balon like was allegedly walking from one of the janky ass bridges between the towers of Pike, and he fell off. We also think that Euron paid for it with a dragon egg. Euron claims to have had a dragon egg, and then when Victorian asks him about it, Euron's like, "Oh, I just threw it in the sea," which is like, Cap, you're not just throwing a dragon egg in the sea, but also, are you really just gonna make up having a dragon egg? I guess you could have just made it up, but maybe you did something with your dragon egg. Maybe you paid to assassinate your brother with it. Also, Euron conveniently pulls up to the Iron Islands the moment that Balon dies, almost as if he had prior knowledge of it, almost as if he arranged it. And then in the Forsaken chapter, which is Aaron's first chapter in the Winds of Winter, Euron kind of admits that he did kill Balon, but not by his own hand, which means like he arranged it. And yeah, this is canon, so read about it. All right, this one's super, super niche. This is actually really cool. You're probably not going to care about this theory. You're probably reading this right now, like Quavo Nagaris is the squinter. Who is Quavo Nagaris and who is the squinter? Okay, Quavo. I'm calling him Quavo, like the rapper. Like because I'm not, yeah, whatever. Quavo is a customs officer in Sohoris. Um, and there's a lot of Faceless Man parallels with this guy. And then the Squinter is one of the Faceless Man that Arya like nicknames in the House of Black and White. There's like the most famous ones like the kindly man, and then there's like the handsome man and the fat man, and this guy's the Squinter. The Squinter is semi associated with the fat Faceless Man because they pull up to the temple together at one point. But anyways, let's break this down. Quavo is in Sohoris in this one Tyrion chapter, and he's introduced. He's squinting, wink, wink, squinting at a Syvas board with a fat man, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and are all around him are these candles that are described like kind of similarly to how the candles and stuff are described in the House of Black and White. This Quavo guy also seems to be at odds with R'hllor, which he really shouldn't be considering he's out in Selhoris, and Selhoris is kind of close to Volantis, and Volantis has like one of the main temples for R'hllor, but like whatever is kind of a smaller point. Quavo's also like the only character to beat Tyrion and Syvas, which just gives you pause because Tyrion is like crushing all these important political Westerosi figures and Syvas, but Random's custom officer and Selhoris is beating him. Like this makes you think, oh, is this guy more important than it seems? It would also just make the scene where Tyrion meets this guy more relevant if he was actually secretly a faceless man. This guy also defeats Tyrion in a pretty symbolic way. He defeats Tyrion by killing Tyrion's dragon and taking out like one of Tyrion's main attacking pieces, presumably. Which is pretty symbolic of like, oh, the faceless men are anti-dragon. Maybe they're gonna kill Daenerys' dragons or whatever, right? This Quavo guy is also like suspiciously well informed. Like he knows way too much about Volantine politics. Not way too much, but like he knows a lot of Volantine politics for someone who's not living in Volantis and for someone who doesn't have access to high speed internet. Like where are you getting all this news from? Like I know you're a customs officer. I expect you to be like fairly well informed, but this guy seems like he knows his shit. Some points against is that this would be like a really subtle. Like I don't know if this would ever be confirmed, and if it is, it would be like super super subtle. Um, and I think it'd have. I can't imagine like this the actual effect on the story it could have. Um, it could be super small, out the way. But I can't think of, and also like this evidence isn't just isn't that strong. Like it isn't that compelling. Like it's like interesting parallels, but it could just not be true, and the story would still work fine. Like he could just actually be a pretty well informed customs officer who is really good at Cybaz, who was squinting and was with the fat man, and doesn't seem to like R'hllor, even though he should probably like R'hllor. Those could all just be true, but whatever. Moving on. So the next theory is that faceless men magic is related to warging. So this theory just exists to explain why Arya is getting like scouted to become a faceless man, like why she's like a first round draft pick for this. So there seems to be a lot of different levels of changing your face. This Jackin guy is able to like just fully change his face. The kindly man seems to be able to use glamours. And then the handsome man seems like he's just changing his nose and using like artifice, which is like weak as fuck. So not all faceless men are built equal. Some are more talented than others. And it seems like Jackin is low key carrying the team right now with his like actual good magic. Um, but yeah, if if faceless magic is working slash skin changing, it makes sense why they're trying to pick up like an obviously talented warg slash skin changer. Um, it would also explain the weirwood presence, like the odd weirwood presence in the House of Black and White. Like the chairs are made of some chairs and doors are made of like weirwood and ebony, which is like yin and yang. But why? There's other stuff you could use for white. You don't have to use weirwoods. Also, there's a lot of parallels between how Vermeer warging, attempting to take over the human woman's body, and Arya like skin changing into that little girl. Like they're described kind of similarly as like the memory is in the consciousness, like fighting back. And obviously, like Arya's isn't as visceral because she's not trying to skin change into a living person who's actively conscious. But in A Song of Ice and Fire, we've seen that consciousness can linger. You know, you can have second lives within animals, and maybe you can have a second life within your skin or whatever. And doing stuff with blood magic, and I don't know, man. It seems to be related to skin changing and working. The point against is that like, how is is Jaqen like is Jaqen's real identity like relevant if he's a talented warg and skin changer? Is he like from the north? How is this random guy from Essos skin changing when we really only seem to see skin changing in the north? Maybe he's from a shy. I don't know. Another theory: faceless men serve the great other. This theory sucks. I don't like this theory. Um, as you can see, my presentation of this theory is for and against is pretty biased. So in favor, we have, oh my gosh, the great other is about death, and the faceless men are about death, and they're both about death, and they both kill people, and so they're probably like related. Um, this is like pretty weak, in my opinion. There's also a straw man, which is partly why it's weak, but it is also like actually weak in my opinion. Like it feels like how these two groups, like the others and the faces when approach death, are very different. The others are like cheating death. The others are resurrecting people and are technically not dead. And it seems like it's like an insult to the sanctity of death, at least how the faceless men seem to see it as like a mercy. The others are kind of robbing people of that mercy by keeping them in a state that's worse than life, but not giving them mercy of death. Also, how would the faceless men possibly come to know about the others? By the main story, Ned Stark just does not even believe in the others' existence, or at least modern existence. And he is the leader of the Starks. He lives in the north. Meanwhile, like he lives near the wall. Meanwhile, the Bravosi like just are not in that same culture that actually has to deal with wildlings and stuff. Um, it's possible that like a group came from hard home and you know said some stuff about the others, but that doesn't mean that the faceless men would automatically believe them. Like no one believes anyone in Westeros. In Westeros, people talk about the others and they'll laugh in your face. But we're somehow supposed to believe that the Bravosi are just super susceptible to this and like believing this. There's also just like not much evidence for this theory. It seems pretty weird. It could be a really weird twist for George to write. Well, the faceless men were actually working for the bad guys the whole time. Weird twist, in my opinion, but we move. Um, Probably wrong about half of this. Let me know what you want to see next. Let me know if I'm missing theories. Let me know if any of my theories sucked. Let me know if my representation of any theories sucked. Let me know if I suck. Let me know if the video sucked. Let me know if the audio sucked. Let me know if the visuals, like, I feel like they were pretty good this go around. They're out of sync. I know that. I'm always messing up with OBS, but I'll get better. Um, yeah, peace.